Recording in progress.
Hi, I'm trying to simultaneously run the thing and also
Oh, thank you.
hang on a minute, just to make sure.
Thanks very much.
Right. All right, on the technical side, I think we're good. If anything goes wrong, it's my fault. Our normal meeting manager is not able to make it tonight, so I'm assuming his duties and do not technically know what I'm doing, but we'll see how it goes.
Let's see here. Well, seeing as it's now 7 p.m., I will call to order the June meeting of the Alcoholic Beverage, Cannabis, and Public Safety Committee of ANC 1C. And just to let folks know what the agenda is tonight, for the part of the meeting I will chair, we just have our monthly report from Third District MPD, and I think we may have a few constituent comments and questions, which is excellent as always. Let me just mention, if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little icon that says raise hand. Just click on that, and it'll put a little hand next to you on the roster. And so when the MPD is through with their presentation, we move on to Q&A, then I think Chairman Wood can call on you and elevate you, and we can proceed in that way. And then once we're through with the MPD presentation, I'm going to hand off to the chair of the Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee, who is going to oversee a presentation by DDOT concerning the plans to and the options to make changes to 18th Street now that all the streeteries have been taken down. So when that time comes, I'll just hand off the gavel and step into the background. And so at this point, if we can do so, why don't we elevate Lieutenant Gavin Harrell with 3rd District MPD, and we'll get our monthly report and take care of any questions we might have. Thanks.
305-1052. Let me have your response. Hello, everyone. Lieutenant Harrell, I'm filling in for the PSA
Okay.
3 Lieutenant, which is Lieutenant Johnson.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, yeah, I'll be filling in for him for a little bit. So this month looks pretty good as far as, so I always go over the last 30 day stats or anything significant. ADWs, of course, as I mentioned before, that's assault with deadly weapons. That could be knife, gun, other, as in a bottle, many things like that. This month we only had one ADW, and that was actually a knife. The circumstances revolving that, it was apparently someone who lives in the community got into an argument with an unknown person while they were walking the dog. Apparently, this argument prompted the suspect to pull out a knife and unbelievably stabbed the victim multiple times. Luckily enough, the victim didn't sustain any life-threatening injuries. But nonetheless, a senseless crime over something so small as in an argument over a dog. Detectives was working that case. It's still an open case. It occurred on June 6th in the 2400 block of 18th Street. So
Mhm.
detectives responded to the scene. They was able to get surveillance video of the suspect, and they took still shots. And when they do that, we issue what we call a bolo. Be on the lookout for. It's basically a still image with biographical descriptions, information about the suspect, age, race, color, clothing, and things like that. And we disseminate that across the department to all 7 districts. We have access to it, as well as those that work specialized units, neighboring detectives units, narcotics unit, and things like that, as well as our CST members. Robberies, surprisingly enough, we didn't have any robberies. This time last year, for the same 30-day period, we had 2 robberies for the same 30-day period from May 17th to June 16th. We had 2 robberies then. This time we have none. Burglaries, surprisingly, 0 burglaries. This time last year we had 1. Motor vehicle thefts stay consistent. This time last year we had 2. We had about 5. That's not a number to be alarmed by. Theft from autos, which is one of those crimes that if a police officer could figure out a way to stop that from happening, they'll probably be voted mayor of whatever city they work in. We had 3 theft from autos, which is insignificant. That's a very small number. This time last year we had 4, so we actually seen a decrease in that. Thefts were actually high. It was an uptick of thefts. This time last year, in the same 30-day period, we had 30 thefts. Uh, within this past 30-day period, we experienced 54. And so I looked it up. It looked like the majority of those thefts occurred over the midnight tour, which is like anything, after 8 o'clock. And majority of those thefts occurred at CVS uh,
Hmm.
and the local 7-Eleven. I do believe
Hmm.
CVS. So I don't know if all CVS, but some CVSs have like unarmed security as a deterrent.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if they went away from that or not.
Hmm.
7-Eleven, I can't recall seeing security
No,
at the
I've never seen
7-Elevens.
security there. Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, so many of those thefts were a combination between CVS, 7-Eleven. Then we had a few that were domestic related where someone is known to the other where you take somebody's property. That's all I have. Tossing it back to you all.
Thank you, sir. I have no questions. If any other commissioners have questions, we'll turn the floor over to them. Otherwise, we'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments from the audience. I believe Chairman Wood.
Hi, thanks. I just one question. I think on June 4th that someone might have passed away in Calamari Park. Do you have any information on what
Hmm,
happened that day?
I remember that.
No, I do not. If you drop your email in the chat, I can respond back to you
Yeah.
with that. You said what was the date on that?
I'm pretty sure it was June 4th. It's like two
June.
Thursdays ago. That sounds about right.
Oh,
Yeah,
actually,
I
I
know
remember that. I was
we
at
got a
work.
notice on that from you guys.
Yeah, I was actually at work, so I don't have to email you at a later date.
Okay.
Basically, it was a younger male. Unfortunately, is believed, and it's tough. And not to get into lecture mode, but typically when folks pass away, you hope that well in age, mid 80s, late 80s, even 90s if you're lucky. I want to say this was an adult male. I can't remember the exact age, but somewhere between 30s and 40s, relatively young, which piqued the interest of law enforcement when someone passed away at that age. But apparently he was unhoused and he was unfortunately drug and alcohol abuser. And of course, drug and alcohol abuser, and you're sleeping outside in the elements makes for a poor combination. And I can only imagine lack of health care as well. But yep, so no foul play on that. I actually remember that when you initially said it, I did remember it as I thought about it. Yeah, it was a young guy because that's something that stand out. Typically, most natural deaths, which would technically that'll still be considered a natural death. Anything outside of someone, committing homicide or someone dying of, some sort of
So,
accident, it'll be considered a natural death. So that was a natural death. It wasn't no foul play involved.
All right. Sorry to hear that, but thanks for the information.
Yes, sir.
That's all I got.
I believe Commissioner Fucillo has his hand raised. Or maybe he doesn't anymore.
Oh,
What you
You found the water man yet?
I might have hit the wrong. Yeah. Sorry. Good.
I'm sorry?
That's good.
All taken care of.
We have any other attendees who have a question or a comment?
I'm not taking.
Looks like no.
I guess I don't think so. And if that is the case, if I'm correct, thank you for your attendance and we appreciate the update. And
Okay. All right.
on that note, I will hand off the gavel, so to speak, to the chairman of the PCT committee, so we can let's see. We got one thing here.
All right. I'm gonna drop my email and my phone number in the chat in case
Oh,
anyone thinks
I see. David was looks like David was trying to ask a question, so
Okay.
I don't want to cut him off.
Sorry, I think I wasn't.
There you go.
Oh,
There you are.
there we go.
Thank
All
you.
right. I was about hour and a half ago, I was coming across 18th Street and I saw an ambulance plus two police cars coming, kind of racing south from 18th and Columbia, and there was another police car up at 18th and Columbia, kind of near the McDonald's. I was wondering if there's anything to that, or if just something that happened and nobody's sure quite yet.
Do we have something going on 18th in Columbia? No idea what.
Okay, that's okay.
So just so you know, because it's tough filtering information as cops. Like honestly, for me, I'm like I don't know how to say it, like a real cop. Like I actually work. Even though I'm a lieutenant, I actually work, right? So it's tough trying to filter police jargon to civilians. But honestly, the best way to do it is to be honest, right? So I think a lot of what you may see when you see cars coding, what we call coding when you have lights and sirens zipping up and down the street, they could be responding for various calls, and that's going to happen throughout the entire tour, throughout the entire day. So nothing that is alarming, because if it was, I would know about it as a lieutenant.
Okay. No, that's
So as far as I'm concerned, since I've been here at 12:30 to now at 7 o'clock, nothing significant has happened. No felony crimes, no serious offenses has occurred. But of course, you're going to see them lights and sirens all day, every day.
sure. All right. I appreciate the transparency.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. We appreciate your support and your report here. And I will, as I was about to do a moment ago, turn the gavel over to David. Thank you, sir.
Great.
I'm David Fucillo, the chairman of the Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee. A couple weeks ago, when we had our monthly meeting, there was discussion around the 18th Street restriping plan. We had a lot of questions that came up, some concerns and so forth. Peter reached out to DDOT about having a conversation about that. And so we have Kelly Jung Olson, apologies if I mispronounced that, and Bethany Turner from DDOT. They were going to be on the call, if we can promote them into the call.
Hey, bud.
Hello.
Hi, Kelly. I hope I didn't butcher your last name.
No, it was perfect. John Olson, perfect. And Beth is here as well. So
Hi,
our
Beth.
plan is to go over the presentation again, or we can just jump right into the question. It's totally up to you.
I'd say if everybody's comfortable with it, I think kind of, hitting the highlights of the presentation, just, because I know people, we heard it a couple weeks ago, but I'm sure people haven't had a chance to fully revisit. So you don't need to go through every single thing, but like really hitting on the important parts as you see it. And then we'll definitely have some questions and some discussion.
Sure. Maybe we can look at the current conditions and just our options, and we can go from there, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, can I share I'm going to share my screen with the presentation, and we can go through it quick.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. This is just the beginning slides from the presentation. Um, uh, yeah, this is just, our agenda. We basically went over the corridor history, some of the existing conditions, kind of highlighted the corridor priorities, how we got from the priorities to the concepts, and then, talked a little bit about the curbside updates and then some of the next steps. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys are all aware some of the corridor history, pre-COVID 2019, and before, the typical roadway section had about 8-foot parking along the curbside, one travel lane in each direction, and then a 12-foot hatched median area. And that was what we had prior to COVID. And so, sort of moving on, into COVID, after, we decided to, have our temporary streetery program. And so that's where we had, the curbside space open for businesses to have streeteries. And so that took away from that hatched median area and gave that space more on the curbside area for wider streeteries than like what a typical parking bay would be. So that transitioned into the permanent streetery program, which maintained the same cross section, streeteries along the curb, one travel lane in each direction. And so moving into 2025, we have the permanent streetery program in effect, and the pilot, concludes. And so into 2026, basically, there's a lot of leftover markings from the streetery implementation, and at this point, we need to resurface the roadway and put in, markings that are aligned with, the roadway use. And so having markings out there that are, for lack of a better word, just sort of rogue markings that are unclear for users is really unsafe. And so that's why we're talking and why we're, have this project today. And so this is to address, we're gonna mill and overlay the roadway and put in a new marking plan. So, just to go over some of the data of this specific sort of 2-block section of 18th Street, our annual average daily traffic is around 9,500 vehicles. Our bike volumes are pretty high here, around 300 daily trips. But also wanted to acknowledge that there are other modes that are also on this corridor, high bus volumes for 2 major routes. Peak headways are around 6 minutes, which is, buses come in every 6 minutes. That's pretty frequent during peak AM and PM time periods. And then this does have the larger articulated buses that are 60 feet long versus the 40, which is the standard bus. And then you all know, this is a very high pedestrian corridor. I think this is where I wanted to spend a little bit of time was, DDOT's really trying to prioritize several items in this corridor. And so it's a way to try and balance the needs here, but then find ways to provide safe access for several different modes and competing interests here. Curbside management for freight, parking, transit access, pedestrian safety. We just heard some fire and EMS are using this section of 18th Street, MPD staging, and then bicycle throughput and vehicular throughput. And so we're trying to manage all of these priorities in this corridor without sacrificing safety and also not, deprioritizing anything. It's really trying to find a balance that we can provide the best for each of these as best we can. So the feasibility review that we did sort of took a look at four options, and they're the striped median, which was the condition that was prior to COVID, an extended sidewalk, which is something that had come to us from Councilmember Nadeau's office as a concept to explore. A hardscaped median, which means a median that is a full height curb rather than something that's just painted, and then standard bike lanes. And these are the four options that we looked at feasibility review that were aligned with the priorities, the corridor priorities. So sort of funneling from the bigger priorities, we have four options for feasibility review. So just to review, the striped center median had parking along the curbside, travel lane in each direction, and then the striped center median. And so one of the things that like really we flagged for this alternative is that it had a lot of safety issues, and I'm sure you guys are aware of some of the loading that took place in the striped center median, really blocking visibility for pedestrians and users of 18th Street, cyclists, multimodal users. These are just some examples of what it looks like when there's a box truck sort of parked in the center median and how it blocks visibility for pedestrians. And so I also just wanted to add something that we brought as just like some support for why this alternative is unsafe. We looked at some of the crash history before when this project when this was installed versus when it was taken out in the streeteries. And so we noticed that there was a 47% reduction of all crash types, 31 in injury, and 20 for pedestrian. And that was something you just wanted to flag as like, this really was an unsafe condition. And so it was flagged for a reason why this project really didn't move beyond feasibility. It just caused so many visibility issues for pedestrians, and having trucks use this sort of like unofficially using the striped median as loading and parking, and that was something that like wasn't safe. The extended sidewalk was a creative idea that came to us, and it was really to hatch out the curb side space on the east side of 18th Street for about 12 feet. And this was to as an option to provide an extended sidewalk. And so what I'm showing on the screen here is 12 feet of hatched out space within the roadway, parking next to it, travel in each direction, and then parking on the west side of the street. And so this was to accommodate, high pedestrian volumes that are on the east side of the street, as like an extended sidewalk area. And so one of the things that came up with this is just that, having an extended sidewalk area that's not at the same grade as the sidewalk really presents some ADA issues with not having sufficient ramps. It's kind of it's an unusual configuration, and just really wasn't an alternative that we wanted to pursue as like a solution for this cross section. So just moving like beyond to our two concepts that we did sort of advance for consideration. And one is the hardscaped median. And so what I'm showing on the screen here is just a cross section of that. And so parking along the curbs, a travel lane in each direction, and then roughly a 10 to 12 foot wide median that would be concrete with a 6-inch height curb. And so that would be something that I think looks a little bit like what you see here in this picture. this is an example from somewhere else in DC, but basically what it looks like is we have a median where people cannot park. And so this would, you know, increase pedestrian visibility. They'd have like a refuge space when crossing the street. It serves as a traffic calming for lower speeds. You wouldn't have that illegal loading or stopping in the median. There wouldn't be any crossing of the double yellow center line, illegal passing. And then, you know, I wanted to put in here there are opportunities for green space. We got feedback, you know, since our presentation that that's probably not what this would be used for. But I wanted to say that there are opportunities for, you know, permeable surfaces, because we don't want to just add concrete if we can avoid it. So the other option that we did advance was to use that center median space for bike lanes. And so what I'm showing on the cross section here is, you know, parking along the curbside, a bike lane in each direction, and then a travel lane in each direction. And so that really just sort of uses that median space into bike lanes. And so this was an alternative that we thought would, you know, balance the needs of the corridor by also using up the space in a way that, you know, also provided some traffic calming and narrowing of the travel lane for slower speeds. You know, allow flexibility for EMS that the center hardscaped median would not. Address the gap in the bicycle network. And then, you know, it's just nimble for future considerations of this roadway. Safety needs, or if a streetery were to submit an application, we wanted to, you know, provide, you know, nimble options, and then changes, you know, in the future. Here, just showing what that would look like. I think it's a you know, parking along the curbside, bike lane, and then travel lane in the middle. One of the things I did bring up in that meeting were some of the curbside updates. This is something that we've been tweaking with the bid. I just wanted to be, you know, transparent. We did have a meeting with the bid to talk about the curbside. That was something they were really interested in trying to like nail down. And, you know, we're working with them to make sure that like the curbside spaces are what can accommodate the businesses and the loading, so that they don't have to find illegal spaces and stop in a travel lane. So that's something we're working with them, and they've been willing and accepting and excited to sort of tweak the curbside space to best fit their needs. So yeah, the next steps, you know, we're in that comment period of where this, you know, we have a QR code for comments on the two options that we presented. We're going to post the NOI in early July, and then construction to follow. Just, you know, be transparent with you all. We've been looking at the results of it, and it's like 85% bike lanes. Not a lot of votes for the center hardscaped median. And in most of the comments that we got are even, you know, are pro bike lane, but then also like, why aren't we doing more protection for the bikes? So that's, you know, feedback that we are, you know, looking at, and, you know, I've been sharing with our bike planning team for when this section of 18th Street more largely, broadly, you know, like down to Florida, up like beyond Columbia, becomes more of a focus area, that is, you know, there's a large lot of comments that are in favor of, you know, protected bike facilities here. So yeah, that's, I guess, sort of hopefully short-winded of the presentation. Can answer questions. We also got questions that we could run through with you all, or I can just answer questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, I'd say let's start real quick first with the rest of the commissioners. If anybody has a question they want to flag. Howard, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was on the call you guys did a few weeks ago, so I'll be brief and because I know we've got some folks in the community who'd like to make comments. I'm glad to hear that you are talking to the bid about all this stuff. I mean, I've always been of the opinion that the first thing you need to do is figure out where the loading zones have to be and where the PUDO zones ought to be. And once you get that done, then you've got space left for parking or whatever else, and that just kind of falls into place. And as I walked 18th Street the other day, it looks, I mean, you've already got these bike lanes in place, as near as I can tell. I mean, what I see now on the street with regard to the bike lanes wouldn't change very much. And I did want to ask, you've mentioned protected bike lanes, and somebody mentioned them on the call last time. And as I look at these graphics, if you've got a bike lane on the outside and then parking in the middle and then the sidewalk on the inside, is it at all feasible to have protected bike lanes? Because you're going to have people who want to cross the bike lanes constantly to go into parking and to go into loading and stuff. And am I missing something, or is that just not possible? And I'll yield back. Thank you.
Yeah, so a protected bike lane facility would have the parking be outside of the facility. That is like it would be, sidewalk, bike lane, parking, loading. But that is something that like we're not looking at for this project. I just wanted to be transparent with what the comments that we've received.
Sure, but just so folks out there understand, if
Yeah.
you'd be unloading stuff and crossing the bike lanes to get it into the store, which kind of defeats the purpose of a bike lane.
Right, which is why that's not an option here. And
Yeah,
like that was
I just wanted to sort of take a chance and reinforce that for a minute. So thanks very much, and I'll yield back because I know other folks want to comment about stuff as well.
Thank you for the clarity on that part of it, Beth. Yeah, let's open the floor to questions. Oh, it looks like so we have a question. The DDOT staffer, I'm just reading this. I'm not adding any editorial. The DDOT staffer just insinuated that streeteries were at fault for delivery truck blockages. What does she think occurred when there was street parking on both sides?
Well, that wasn't my intention at all to insinuate that streeteries had any impact in that. I guess the configuration of the roadway when streeteries were installed were a little wider than parking, so that's where that space came from, if that makes sense. So like parking width is about 8 feet. And then when we installed the streeteries, we gave an additional 12, I believe. So that took an extra, 8 feet from that center area and gave it to the streeteries, which made sense. And so then that's what, when we did that pilot, that's what we worked with. But now that the new streetery guidelines have been implemented, the streetery widths that we are allowing is 8 feet, which makes sense because that is what the width of a parking lane is. And so that way on a block, you could have a streetery and then a parking right, parallel, aligned, and there wouldn't be an adjustment in width for that. So does that make sense? There should be roughly in the same area. And that's what any condition that we want to install on 18th wants to allow the opportunity for if a streetery or a business were to apply for a streetery, that could be installed. We don't want to make it so that that's not possible. We want that to be possible.
Peter, are you able to tell if we have anybody trying to raise a question from the attendees?
Yeah, just elevated one person to talk.
Hello.
Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, thank you. I'm very concerned with this sort of sterile rendition of 18th Street, and I'm wondering whether you're not really considering the needs of pedestrians who have to cross a parking lane, a bike lane, a traffic lane, another traffic lane, another bike lane, and another parking lane in order to get to the other side, as the old chicken joke goes. There's a proliferation of delivery vehicles, drivers, motorbikes, scooters, electric bicycles on 18th Street. And if traffic isn't moving fast enough for them, they will simply use the bike lanes and mow people down. And I feel as though this is a very nice static image of 18th Street, but it's nothing like the lived experience. So I wonder, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern. I've seen, motorized scooters cross the double yellow to get around stopped vehicles. That's not just using the bike lane, they're going into oncoming traffic. It's definitely a valid concern, and especially in a congested area here where you have all of the competing priorities, high pedestrian, high transit, high bike volumes that we saw. So I see what you're saying here, and not having that refuge in the middle for pedestrians is something that that's what we did look at here. The hardscapes median would provide that, and that was why that one was considered. But one of the things that the bid did recommend, and that's something that we're gonna look at, is just some safety improvements at Belmont at that crossing. And so we're going to be looking at, a couple different options for what can we do to, increase visibility for pedestrians there at a major crossing on the corridor. So I hear what you're saying, and I know that that's a valid concern.
It's more than a concern. It's a lived experience on Columbia Road.
All right. Looks like a 202 area code has been promoted.
I'm sorry, I just said it's a lived experience. It's not just a concern.
Oh yeah, sorry, Mary. We definitely heard you. I was just there was somebody else that was about to say something, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have I been recognized?
Yes, you have. Yes, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is Dennis James. I'm president of Calorama Citizens Association, and 18th Street is entirely within our membership boundaries, as is over 2/3 of Adams Morgan. So I'm not trying to make a big deal of that. I just wanted the folks from DDOT who may not know about local politics to understand. Mary raised a great point. Having an island in the middle, big deal if you still got to cross bike lanes, where people are zooming down, or, perhaps some of these delivery drivers are in them. That DDOT needs to somehow get better control of these delivery personnel. I have nothing against any of them, and I don't know what their statuses are. It used to be that most of them didn't have license plates even, but now I notice that most of them do seem to have some kind of a license plate, but who knows what else that they should have that they don't. But the main thing here is public safety, and I want fire and rescue and MPD to be able to go up and down this corridor, and then that's, we depend on them. I've lived in the neighborhood for a long, long time. I live on the 1800 block of Calorama, which is, where one of the end points would be for this particular part of your project. It's really like folks who want more protected bike lanes. Do they ever ride on Columbia Road? Do they ever see the chaos that has caused for pedestrians and drivers? I drive my vehicle and I come into my alley, and I'm always at risk of running into somebody who I can't see because I'm making a right turn with a bike lane between me and the sidewalk. So it's a highly flawed thing that has been put on Columbia Road, and to repeat that mistake on 18th Street would be a true tragedy. I don't think either of the plans are very good. And if you put bike lanes on both sides, then you'd be begging people to say, oh, make them protected, you know, and we don't need streeteries. You saw the reaction. All of the brand new free streeteries were ripped out because none of the businesses wanted to pay, you know, for the annual rent and so forth. So please don't allow those to come back. That's complete insanity. And it would throw this whole plan out the window, because then you'd have different areas that they would be taking up. What we need is adequate loading and unloading for the businesses. And they all, you know, there's 42 ABC businesses. That means that there's an awful lot of big trucks unloading kegs of beer and, you know, all the rest of it come and go. And they come and go regularly. That's just a few of the points. I don't want to talk forever. And if you have any responses to what I've said, that's fine. I plan to submit some testimony for the record. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, I think those are valid concerns here. You know, we're not anticipating protected bike lanes for this area here. This is just for the painted bike lanes. But I do want to acknowledge that, you know, the delivery scooters that are really, you know, driving recklessly, that's an effort that is I want to acknowledge, like, that DDOT is really like brainstorming and trying to figure out something that we can work with, you know, our partners in DC of how can we address this. You know, when scooters first came, you know, there was a way to set the max speed limit to 15 miles per hour, but these are rogue entities here that there's no sort of regulation we can work with. But I do think that this is something that our entire agency is concerned with, because this is a huge issue here and then other, you know, highly dense areas. And then I do agree with you, you know, we're working to make sure that the curbside space is tweaked, so that it does accommodate the needs of the businesses as best as possible. We want to make sure that there is no need to illegally load because the space is available. And that's twofold, with having the right curbside designations and then having the correct enforcement so that people aren't parking there all night and then essentially blocking the loading. So yeah, I hear you.
Thank you for that. Am I still being heard?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Oh, okay. But I did just have one other point. In January, I noticed that new signs had been put up, like parking signs, and you're not even allowed to use coins in the parking meters. You have to use a credit card. That's just utterly astoundingly intrusive to me. But beyond that, if it's similar to a few others that I've used around the city, one has to give up your license plate and, you know, number. It's really just astounding. But more astounding is that almost all of them are for 10 minutes. Like, what can you accomplish in 10 minutes? It's very light. You know, is it all designed to be for the food delivery folks and nobody who wants to go out to dinner from another part of the world who comes here and park along 18th Street? You know, that would help civilize it. I'll stop talking. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Dennis. We'll go ahead to Peter and Commissioner Peter, and then Catherine after that.
All right, thanks. So thanks for all this information. A couple of things. One, just to clarify on streeteries, the permanent legislation that was put into place last year still permits streeteries to exist in a street like 18th Street. Is that correct? It's just a matter of businesses decided that the cost threshold was higher than they can afford at this time. So they took them down, or volunteered to have the pilot project ones down because they couldn't afford to continue having that place. That's my first question. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Next question. Like, one thing that happens a lot, and like when we saw when the streeters have gone away, that having more on-street parking has meant there's been more on-street double parking, which means that a lot of the congestion comes because there's a lot of parked cars over the place. Forgive me if we mentioned this and I just overlooked it, but is that something that you've considered in this plan, just to kind of make sure that as you said, tweaking the potential pickup drop-off zones as well as loading and unloading zones to try to find structural incentives or disincentives so that people aren't double parking and just blocking, especially on weekend nights. It's, I think, sometimes when I've seen it when there's like an ambulance trying to get through and also cars, of course, the driver's trying to do an illegal U-turn, and there's drunk pedestrians, and then also there's two like Mercedes parked in the way. So that, like, I know it's impossible to fix all of that at the same time, but is that something that you've incorporated into these kind of conversations?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like a bike lane right next to the parking lane is going to be it's going to be a spot that I think certain people are going to try and double park in. I think it's something that we're going to have to make sure that we have like correct enforcement in this corridor. I think that it's definitely going to have to um, it's going to be something that like we're going to have to increase enforcement when this definitely does go into place to, you know, change some behaviors and make sure that we have the right enforcement. We don't want this to be a parking lot, and that's what you're seeing now. And so we're hoping that this can make some changes for that.
Thanks. And one other question, as far as just, I mean, I know that like very understanding that there's a limited period of time to do construction when the weather is accommodating, and not particularly speaking as an individual commissioner, you usually don't have the philosophy of trying to impede projects just for the sake of avoiding change, but that community input can be a tool to try to make the projects better. But also doing that on the timeline that is necessary can be tough. Are there any budget constraints on top of that as well? That like, are there certain things that maybe people in the community have advocated for? I think you've mentioned that some of them exist, but is there anything that's just like, at this point, there's not money to do it, so it's not worth advocating for, but maybe in the distant or medium future that there could be more opportunity, or is there budget flexibility for this project?
I think there's a little bit of budget flexibility. You know, like I said, there's some safety improvements that we're going to look at Belmont that I think we hadn't originally thought of, and I think that that's something that you know, we can incorporate. I think that this isn't, you know, a blank check. This is a resurfacing project with markings. But you know, if we can add any, you know, like reflective signage or, you know, additional pavement markings for, you know, to improve yielding conditions. Those are things that we're gonna look into with this project.
All right, thank you. Has by any chance is one of those Belmont ideas an elevated crosswalk or something related to that? Because that's been discussed before, and it seemed like an interesting idea to the people I discussed with.
It's something, yeah, something we're gonna look into.
Okay, cool.
That the one thing that I want to caveat that you know, an elevated crosswalk or, you know, intersection or crosswalk, some of those do require some drainage impacts, and so we want to make sure that, you know, we're not going to add ponding along with, you know, a different, you know, add to make a different issue. So that's something we're looking into to see if that's
Awesome.
possible.
I'll stop there. Thanks for answering all those questions.
All right, Catherine, go ahead.
Thank you. I really just have a comment more than a question. But I represent 1C09, so right at like 17th and Euclid near the Harris Teeter. And just as someone who bikes quite a bit, especially to get groceries and to run errands, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate this design and I really appreciate the bike lane idea, and have talked to quite a few residents, especially on my street on 17th, who are really excited about this and have directed them to the feedback survey. So thank you guys for considering that and taking the time to put this design in place.
Peter, it looks like there's somebody on an iPhone that has a hand raised. Go ahead, iPhone user. You're free to speak. Can you hear us?
I'm sorry about that. Can you
No
hear me
worries.
now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry about that delay. I just wanted to say, I kind of wish we had more than the two options that were presented. It kind of felt like Stone Age and current age, and a little concerned about the way for residents to provide feedback is through a QR code, or I think I think our DDOT staffer colleague said there was an NOI. So that just to me that says like how are people supposed to interface really on a normal level on feedback? Um, and I'm just going to tick through a couple things and not try and editorialize anymore. But the big reason the street trees got jacked around with through the mayor's office. Everybody knows that. Going back to COVID days, once there was that jamboree on a Friday night. I'm curious if there's any plan or intent to gather information from BID, from DDOT, from whatever entity to document business receipts from businesses now that they don't have streeteries going forward. I think that would be really helpful. And our fellow neighbor KCA chairman, who is extremely dedicated to the well-being of neighbors and whatnot, I think does us a bit of a disservice with regard to like, oh, I have to check my mirror when I'm turning right because of bike lanes. And this has been a decadal increased issue with the increased nature of scooters and whatnot. Yeah, you have to be a little extra vigilant. I don't think that's any reason to, in any way, forestall installation of bike lanes on 18th. If you look at 18th and 19th and Adams Morgan, morning or an evening, they have to be like pretty much higher, almost as higher traffic as 15th Street. It's just 21st century reality. I also want to ask about whether or not there's any a standing kind of file about when Adams Morgan, when 18th Street had the streetscape renovation in 2008, widening the sidewalks, which did a great deal to reduce like personal conflicts on weekends. Let's just call it that. Whether there are any kind of thoughts about not what we got wrong, but what we could improve in the future. And the delivery scooter stuff, I know it's citywide, but it's really compact here and in Columbia Heights and other areas. And like Mary mentioned, these folks get real impatient when it comes to choked traffic situations. And traffic guidelines are different in their home countries, and they just go into she said bike lanes, but my experience is they mostly pull into oncoming traffic lanes. And there was big focus on it in 2023, 2024. Some post articles. Brian Nadeau talked about streamlining, like immigrant experience and educating them in terms of traffic laws. I don't think that's gone anywhere, but I'd be happy to hear otherwise. And I'm sorry for going on longer than I planned.
No, thanks. We appreciate the comment. I don't know, Bethany, if you have anything in response to that, before we move on to some of the remaining questions.
No, I mean, DDOT's
Okay.
doing before and after studies, which is something that like we're looking at the impacts of a project. And so I think that that's something we're going to be continuing to do with all of our projects. That's more about the safety impacts, but that's something that, we're sharing publicly to make sure that that's open for people to see.
Okay. Thank you. We've got a few questions, just like 2 or 3 questions in the chat. I'll just run through. I know we're right, this is scheduled from 7 to 8, so I want to make sure to be respectful of everybody's time. Someone asked, are there any lessons that were learned from the Columbia Road improvements that will inform the future efforts on 18th Street?
That's a really good question. Yes, I think getting the curbside right early versus having confusing curbside changing it as frequently. When we installed Columbia Road, we did a little changing of the curbside parking signs after or mid installation. I feel like that was confusing. I think we changed it, at the request of the community because it didn't fit. But I think that trying to get that right before installation was something that I think we're going to focus on. I think for this, but then also everywhere. Just when parking is such in high demand, especially in this sort of like densely commercial loading, high turnover, we don't want it to be more confusing than it has to be, especially when we're getting DPW involved and, we want enforcement, but then we're changing the signs 2 weeks after we installed it. So.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like Kelly is responding. There was a question, just to get it on the record. Somebody was asking, given their level of experience and the reason to care about the street area, is it why couldn't DDOT let the bid have some authority to enforce parking and write tickets? But Kelly said, unfortunately, parking enforcement is not within DDOT's purview.
And also, yeah, I mean, that's another kind of policy question. I mean, giving some entity, I mean, I think there was some conversation during some council testimony in the past that why don't we have I don't know, parking officer or like MPD officer to write ticket from like, like citizens. So there's a lot of safety concerns. So I know that there are some movement going around, but that's not something we can answer at this point.
All right. There was one question that I don't, Mary was asking, why can't the community at large be allowed to attend the bid discussions? This isn't just a business neighborhood. Isn't this a violation of the Sunshine Law? I think, Mary, my understanding, and feel free, anybody that knows better can correct me if I'm wrong, is Sunshine Law applies to discussions in which official votes are being held or decisions are being made. I don't believe the bid has that authority or power, but we can check with the OAG and get a better answer.
I think Brian Barry from the bid is also on the call, maybe raising his hand. I don't know, Brian, if that was to answer this question, but we'd love for you to weigh in.
Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, sorry, and I won't take much time because I know, like has been discussed, we had a meeting with DDOT, which was a request because the business community are the people we represent, and they have a vested interest, in the plan, because obviously this is basically their driveway. So, yeah, I just wanted to address a couple things. We're obviously very focused on this. It's important to us. We're concerned about pedestrian safety. I think the slide said 309 bike trips a day. We have counters on the street. There's between 2,000 and 3,000 pedestrian trips a day. And the pedestrians are, frankly, people in the neighborhood going to businesses, and oftentimes the bicyclists are going through the neighborhood. So and we're very concerned about bicycle safety, and very interested in that, and pedestrian safety and everybody's safety. And the loading thing is real. I mean, you have, like Dennis says, there's dozens of ABCA businesses on that street, and many of them get deliveries every day or multiple deliveries a day. And there has to be a place to unload. And, I mean, and the business community, frankly, is why a lot of people on this call moved to Adams Morgan, because they like the atmosphere, the interesting stuff, always something to do. But and also we did suggest the raised crosswalk, which we think would significantly help pedestrian safety, and also cut down on the stunt riding with the mopeds, at least unless they decide to turn into an Evel Knievel thing and try to catch some air there. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that stuff out there. That this is something we're very interested in. We're trying to work with DDOT to make sure whatever solution comes out of this does not negatively impact the business community, because they're a pretty vital part of the neighborhood. And and frankly, the Columbia Road project had some negative consequences for pedestrians and for businesses.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brian. Really appreciate that. Since we're coming up on 8 o'clock, wanted to wrap it up with one question, request, comment, Bethany. You'd mentioned Belmont and working on some safety things with that. I think one of the concerns that came out of this, and I know Peter mentioned it in the letter that he sent to Tyler Williams at DDOT, was it just at times felt like the public notice and the community input process felt a little inadequate. It felt like here are the two options and that's it. Do what you want to do, what you're going to do. So I would hope that as you're thinking about the Belmont side of things, like please reach out to us. Please, like we meet monthly. We'd love to hear from you. The sooner the better, just so we can get in on the ground floor input. We appreciate that Commissioner or Councilmember Nadeau's office was able to contribute, but I think our ANC does know this area best, probably. Not to toot our own horn too much, but just want to put that out there. But we do appreciate you taking the time and spending an hour explaining and answering questions. And I'm sure we'll have more. And everybody that's on the call, obviously, make sure you get your there's the QR code and the URL there. Make sure you get your comments in. If you have other questions, feel free to reach out to any of your ANC in the neighborhood. And on that note, I believe we will call it an evening.
Great. Thank you,
All
guys.
right.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.